Give an update.
Thank you.
Finance Committee met today. We discussed a bunch of things. We discussed our November financial statement. We discussed the paid family leave information that Jeremy will be going over in a bit. We have some decisions to make, so he'll talk about that. We started laying groundwork for the budget in the springtime, which he'll also discuss today. And then we voted to combine some lines on the balance sheet. So it was a busy meeting. We don't have our next one planned right now, but they are open to the public. So stay tuned, and I'd encourage anyone to come visit.
Thank you, Randy. Questions for Randy or the Finance Committee? Okay, appreciate that. Anything from policy?
Yes, we met today, and we reviewed a couple of the policies that have been tabled recently, BEA and KI, I think. We've also started looking at a AI policy and trying to work on that, so you probably will see some new, I think you'll see policies come to you next meeting. If so, once you see them, feel free to take a look, ask Marie, Megan, or I if you have any questions before they get to the committee, and then we can answer anything and bring something back if we need to clarify something. But yeah, so I don't know when our next meeting is, but that one also, we are also open to the public, so.
Thank you, Michelle. I know all these committee acronyms and so forth are, these three letters. Will the AI policy actually be AI?
We're gonna have artificial
Yeah,
intelligence.
but,
Yeah.
but it's
Even better.
IJND or something, I don't know.
The chatbot will report. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do want to say we had a training for administrators in York County that we put on as a superintendent's group, and one of the neatest things that Mandy and Meg showed me yesterday is that you can take a bunch of documents that you have and bring the information in, and it will create an automatic podcast for you with two voices talking back and forth. It was pretty amazing. It was pretty decent to be like, oh, that is weird.
That's some cool tech. Excellent. Well, thanks for the committee and digging into that and positive ways we can put it to work. Let me see. Instructional committee? Do you have on here?
We haven't met since our last board meeting, so we don't have anything new to report.
Negotiations personnel? Anything? Okay.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
And you have evaluation committee.
I apologize, that's not on the agenda.
Yep.
Would you like to give an update, Marie? Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll be meeting later in executive session and speaking with Mr. Indorf at the policy committee today. We're have a few changes that we'll be looking to make to CBI and CBIR to make sure that they complement the process that we've put into place. So we'll be looking to approve those in January sometimes.
Thank you, Marie. Those policies can be found on the school department website, and appreciate that. Any other questions on committee work or anything that I missed? Very good, thank you. Old business, we don't have any, so that takes us to new business. Jeremy, would you take us through the BPS construction update?
Yes, so we had a meeting today on the project. A couple of things is that we seem to be at the point where we have power run in from the street, which will be a separate service. The reason to do that is so that that new wing of the building has its own power service versus the rest of the building, because it would have made and called for a substantial electrical upgrade in the other part of the building, and we were able to do that piece. When we come back from winter vacation, we will start to see masonry going up the wall, so that when kiddos come back, they'll start to see the formation of walls, which is a pretty exciting piece. Other than that, the groundwork part of it is not the most exciting piece throughout the process, but that's where we are. Timelines seem to be good. They've been using frost blankets to keep things from freezing up, which is important at this piece. What's happening right now is not going to be the most helpful thing in the world for us with the amount of rain over the next couple of days, just because that muds everything up. It makes deliveries and the other pieces a little bit more challenging. in the perfect world, we would start to get walls up and start to get the roof on before a huge amount of snow comes in. And if the weather holds out like it did, some during the vocational center, that just allows the process to speed up that much more.
Questions on that construction for Jeremy? What is the targeted completion date on that approximately?
Sometime in the fall of '25, again, getting there to day one of school will be very difficult, but I think way too early to start making predictions.
Yep, got it. Thank you. Good, it's an exciting project. I stopped by to check it out, I think, last Friday, and it's cool to see it progressing, and it's amazing progress for Biddeford. I think we're all just at the groundbreaking. It seems like it was just weeks ago, and to see the foundation poured already is just amazing. So, great progress. Jeremy, would you also like to take us through item B, athletic participation demographics data, VHS?
Yes, so we talked a little bit about how we would continue to break out data and inform us about some of the decisions that are made. And Dennis was able to work on how we would get athletic information into Infinite Campus so that we could start pulling things with a little bit more of a look towards economically disadvantaged IEP students, ML students, as that was a question about earlier in the year about participation levels. And so I was able to break down our sports. We had to combine some sports just because the number of students participating or not participating could be identifiable because of the low number of participants on a team. But, the end results as you look at this data is that when you look at winter participation or fall participation, we had 31% of our student athletes participate in the fall. And that's probably a pretty good accomplishment for it because this includes athletics only, not other clubs, which we will bring in next. But when you look at economically disadvantaged students, you're looking at 99 students or 13.7% of the population. Or if you, look at that as what was in the fall, you would be closer to 40 some odd percent in the fall. Yet we know that we're 62 or 3% as a district economically disadvantaged participating in those pieces. When you come to winter sports, you'll see that number drops significantly. And so whether this is a school department thing or, kind of us as a community piece, beginning to continue to explore what the numbers actually say and then what do they actually mean. Can be two different pieces. And so I just wanted this is informational, but this is also what we're going to try to continue to put together as on the school department side so that we can show comparative demographics and where they're participating. Marty, sorry.
This is great. I really appreciate this. I think this is a commitment from our board, right, to increase participation in athletics and clubs. So we have the athletic information here for these different learners. So, here's part two of what my next ask is going to be. I think that some of our teams have freshmen, JV, and varsity, but I don't know for sure which of our programs have that and which don't. So for instance, I know we've had to make cuts in boys basketball, but I think we have a freshman, a JV, and a varsity team. And then as I can see, our numbers are really low in girls basketball. But as we go through in the fall sports, I just don't know about soccer because I don't have a kid that plays soccer. Do we have a freshman, JV, and varsity team? So I'm hoping maybe we could break that down and then also maybe get some information about the numbers that we have at the middle school because I think I know boys basketball because I have a kid that's obsessed with it. So I know that this year we had to make 2 cuts at the boys basketball level in middle school, which is going to end up impacting who tries out for boys basketball, and which is a very popular program, but I know there's a commitment at the middle school level not to make cuts, which is great, I appreciate that. And then we get into like some of these more popular programs at the high school. All I guess I wanna know and how I can be supportive as a board member is when we're missing like a freshman level, team, do we need to create one, and then do we need to hire one so that we can get more kids involved in some of these more popular sports?
So typically what we've done when it makes sense, meaning numbers driven, has added other teams. Certainly, like for middle level, it's a little bit easier because if you wanted to add like a third team, we've been able to do that, and Carl's been able to pull a schedule together that may not be the same number of games, maybe a little bit of less number of games. When we get to some of the high school pieces, honestly, you take our facilities in basketball time. Let's say that you had enough for I want to say a fourth boys team, which I don't think anyone high schools have or anything. You do run out of gym space at time because wrestling has been a shared sport. We have cheering is at Biddeford Primary School. We use the intermediate school not only for middle school, but the rec comes in there and does a lot of their programs at the intermediate school. They use the community center. In the past, cheering had been at the community center, but there's also a lot of needs from the community that want that space. We probably gym space wide are a little bit short around here when you come to the winter pieces. But we are going to continue to look at all of these things. We can certainly like say which ones have, I want to say, a number of slots or sports available for that, because we do try to create teams. The piece that interests me the most about this is that when I look at, say, the demographic on cheering, that gives us a very different demographic than what you look at if you're looking at, say, field hockey. Or when you look at indoor track has one demographic, but obviously we know that ice hockey has a different. And I think those are some things that we have to study of the reason why, and my guess is going to go back to individual opportunities as youth and cost. And I think that's the piece that we have to consider, is that there used to be a day, I think, when you think of, I'll pick on baseball for an example. There was a day where you had huge little league teams, you didn't need $400 bats, and you had tons of kids playing. And now, as you look at how travel ball has impacted that, participation levels are down. And I think it's sad when we hear like parents in our community say, well, my kid really probably won't play basketball or play this because they're a sixth grader and they haven't done years of X. Like, that seems quick, and I think that's hard for us to build programming, especially when you offer so many programming. And so I really want to break this down. This is an example of what this would look like. We were able to work on the high school piece, work on the middle school piece, got to try to bring in all of those clubs into IC, and then also figure out, like, it's easy in the fall that we know that the soccer player is a unique student and not competing in something else. As we get to the clubs and other things, we're going to have to figure out, like, unique sets of students are doing one, doing the other. But just continuing to look at those pieces and see what we're missing, or if we're not missing anything as a community, and at the same time trying to get other schools in the area to do the same thing, so that we can say, hey, if there's a different thing going on in Sanford that's happening here, what are they doing that's good? I would also want to have this conversation as we start to build this with our rec programs, because when you drive by, St. Louis Field in the fall, you see 1 million kids playing soccer. what's the barrier for that to continue for whatever that is. And so I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well. And then studying and asking why people go in different directions. And I get concerned that a lot of it is cost-driven for families.
Well, I agree that it's cost-driven, but I just want to make sure you understand, like, I'm not criticizing
Yeah.
how well, there's a lot of programming. I think we have a lot of teams. I can't imagine what Carl and Dennis's job is to come up with, like, field times and gym times. If we need to create freshman teams and create those positions, I just want to make sure people know we're committed to that.
Yeah. And
see what
Dennis,
we can
and
do.
like, it just, again, to provide more examples for the community, like if Dennis comes to me like in years and he'll say, hey, Jeremy, I need a stipend to add this. And he'll say, I'm taking it from here because my numbers don't support this. And we've always slid that over to add an extra. A lot of times it's track. It's track. It's usually, we've had years where it's been over 100 kiddos and you've got 3 adults running through the high school hallways, and Dennis is like, I need one in the gym, I need one on each floor, and we come up with those things pretty easily.
Marie?
So I have a few questions, and I'm just going to kind of go page by page here. So when I'm looking at girls' ice hockey, 10 total participants, is that all BHS, or is that combined with other schools?
This is BHS numbers only.
Okay. Looking at the second page, 75 total track participants, is that boys and girls combined?
Yes.
Okay. Little alarming to see our swimming numbers, because we had a great swimming program, and hockey numbers are dismal as well, and we all know how well hockey did in years past, and it would be nice to get those, back up to snuff. Cross-country, is that boys and girls combined as well, the 11?
I believe so.
So when I was looking at, like, the fall sports, kudos to boys soccer. They had a great season, and we've engaged a lot of our ML kids in that program, and they had tremendous success. And I would think that we ought to be able to get more of our ML kids even into something like cross-country, especially where we can shoe kids up through a running passion. I'd love to see an increase there with boys and girls and reaching out to our ML population, both male and female. Looking at girls soccer, I was looking at the numbers, and then I had gone over to a couple of the middle school games this year. And one of the things that I was a little concerned about was, I know there were 6th graders on this one team, there were 7th graders, and I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think there were only like 3 8th graders in that program. Is that correct?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. That would not surprise me.
Okay, Scott, did you happen to know that number for the? Yeah, it was pretty low. And so I guess one of my questions was, would that have something to do with 8th grade being here and not down there? Why are we losing our 8th graders in soccer? So I think that's something we need to look at, because those are the feeder programs to the high school. And if we're going to have, JV varsity programs, I really think we need to look at a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team combined, where we only had 3 8th graders. We've got 6th graders to really round out the roster. So I think we need to be looking at that. And the other thing, there are certain areas where I think our ML population is jumping in and doing a great job. And then I think there are areas where, with a little bit of exposure, we could increase those numbers and get those numbers up on our teams and give them a really good, viable experience with providing some of the equipment, but also engaging them as to what the possibilities are and getting them out there. And I guess my last comment would be looking at the engagement of our ML kids higher on the male side than our female side. And I know there are a lot of cultural barriers to that, but I know when I walk through the schools and see them, I know and I see lots of potential talent there. So we need to really reach out to all of our kids and really get them a little bit more engaged, because I know one program that's having a lot of success with the engagement of their ML kids is South Portland, and they've had success with their teams as those numbers have grown. So I think we need to, both in their male and female population. So that's something I can get some information on as to how they reached out to those populations and engaged them through a former colleague and friend of mine. But I'd like to see that female side grow, because I think in looking at what we have, we've got lots of potential in those students. And I'm sure if I walked through their PE classes, I would see that visual potential as well. So I would like to see that increase.
Yeah, and I think this just gives us a good opportunity, is really trying to build this baseline of what our demographics look like, what our population look like, what the opportunities are, to have informative discussions instead of well, we suspect this or we suspect that, where now we can say, here's a number, then what are some of those barriers that exist? Because, again, two things that I would know historically is, one, we know that a couple of years ago, boys soccer was in a very different place than it is today. But it's also interesting that I want to take hockey for an example. Back when the economy was very tough in the late 2008, 9, 10, during that piece, you can look at your youth hockey numbers and see how those trends went like that, and then over time spiked back up. And I do think that a lot of these certain pockets are driven by things that happen in the economy as the cost is there and where families make some choices. And I think the other piece is that across the nation, and not just here, high school sports has started to bounce back from that COVID withdrawal that occurred, of kids who may have set out their sophomore year or freshman year because there wasn't much for athletics, and then just never rejoined.
Marie?
I just know with girls hockey, we started from the ground up, and I took anything and everything from anyone and got equipment on girls that we fitted them into. And, you know, when I look at like golf, I'm sure we'd have somebody, you know, if they could get, and I'll find a set of clubs from somewhere, from somebody. I know enough golfers, you know, to get a kid, you know, engaged in the game of golf, which is a lifetime sport. I think there are things that we can work on in finding some equipment for kids and you know, exposing them to it and letting them, you know, have a try at it. But if it's a matter of equipment, I'm willing to knock on the doors and go to the resources I have to get something on, you know, on kids so that they can participate, whether it be a set of clubs, a set of skates, you know, padding, you know, protective gear, what have you. So I think it's just a matter of letting them know that there are people out there that can do that for them, and then, you know, making that happen.
Thanks, Marie. Chad?
Just real quick, I want to push this committee to understand what a success criteria looks like. We have great data here, but without knowing when we can claim success, what level of participation we're looking for as a community, whether that's total participation or it's distributed amongst the different ED, EIP, or ML, what are we shooting for? That may help us put together a roadmap of things that we can accomplish to get there. Because right now, without a goal, we're just, I don't know if we have a direction. The second comment, and maybe Chris, this is to you, the key findings, it looks like those percentages are a percentage of the ED students in the whole group of students, because 99 students out of 226 isn't 13%. So I'm just curious where the 13.76% came from. Oh, sorry, I looked at you for everything, sorry.
No, I looked at that too. Chad, I think that's a percentage
Overall
of
population,
the total student body.
total student body.
Okay, so then it goes back, okay, are we trying to increase that number? Are we trying to increase the overall participation? Just what are we trying to accomplish here? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something we could do as a goal-setting session for the committee. Others? Okay, well, thank you for a good discussion. I'm glad we're digging into this. I think, Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head, which broadly speaking, the trends are towards a rebound in involvement after COVID, and I think we all agree that that's wonderful. We set some goals and see if we can seek more engagement, because further engagement by the students in these after-school activities is good all around. All right, Jeremy, would you like to take us through item C, the paid family leave decision discussion?
Yes, and this is for, totally informational tonight, but it's something that we need to be brought up to speed upon. There's a memo in your in there that will kind of go through the points. So, as you guys know, there's a paid family leave law that starts January 1st. So starting on January 1st, all employees and employers in the state of Maine, unless you're under, I believe, 15 employees, have to contribute into a system. That system is run by the state, where an employee pays a 0.5% of their salary and the employer pays 0.5% of their salary. Now, one of the things we've done as a school department, just to talk about the January 1st date, is January 1st is actually a payday for us here in the school department, which is also coincides with a holiday. And we were able to seek some guidance and have some conversations that, because of it was a holiday, employees would actually get their pay on the 2nd. We moved that to the 31st, which allowed us to avoid one payroll of tax. Which is a savings for our employees and our school department of about $5,500 in each party. This tax comes into play, and the rules require January 1 through April 1st. So you have 3 months that you must pay into the state. By March 30th, districts, employers, whatever, have to make a decision whether they're going to have the state handle this benefit or a private insurance company. There are reasons why you may look at not having the state do that. Reason number 1, customer service. We work with Paquin and Carroll, they're our service providers. If we had a local issue, I know that I can pick up the phone and talk to a representative that's in our community, and they come and they solve the problem because you are their client. State level, like if you're, say, in workers' comp, obviously they're going to work with you, but they aren't worried about having your business. Number 2 is we have short-term and long-term disability insurance that our employees can purchase. And you would be working with one carrier that may handle your family medical leave claim that turns into a short-term disability or maybe even to a long-term disability, and our employees would be dealing with one company. A third factor that is financial in nature is that if you join the state system, you can't access your benefits in either system right now until at least May of 2026, which means you're 17 months of tax payment before you can hopefully use a benefit that it would be administered by them. If you go to a private insurance carrier, you stop paying the tax after March 30th until the program is started up by the state. So employees would at least have 13 or 14 months of not paying a tax, and the employer would too. From a financial perspective, the potential savings between employees and employers split evenly is $361,000. If you're making a paycheck of $2,000, you're losing in this tax $10 every week, every pay period. So we defer that a little bit longer. The other interesting point that we have to have is that because we share a tax ID number, federal tax ID number, with the city, the school department and the city must make the same decision. So I've got to work with the city on this piece to see which direction they're going to go for their employees, whether it's state or private. We both have, Paquin and Carroll is our insurance, agent, and work through this piece. So before the end of March, the board will need to make a decision of which direction we're going based off the new rules. But this is what I tend to understand from it right now. Felt like it's important to get out because on no matter how many times we send out a notice or talk about this, January 1's going to come and people not only adjust to, in January you always have like your new tax information that comes out each year, and if you notice your checks usually are different by a few dollars because of the new tax information, and then you have this, people are going to be like, why is my check $30 less this time around? And so we have to be able to talk about this, make decisions, figure this out. Fairly complicated process, at least what I'm understanding of it right now, and I'm not an HR person, but trying to work through this one.
Randy?
So you mentioned we have to make a decision by March, but really this goes into effect on January 1st. So how does that part work?
So the January 1st part, we are paying in all businesses, my understanding is all businesses, schools, employers have to pay in for a minimum of 3 months to the state, I guess, as they start to build that initial, I don't know, pocket of money for benefits.
So we don't have to determine which way we're going, private or public, at that point.
Correct.
We're just paying, and we can decide by March.
And then you have to have, and then you would file it's a $250 application fee, is my understanding, if you want to go with the private piece. And based off the advice from Paquin and Carroll, because they do expect that legislature will have some conversations about this, there will be more questions or hopefully answers, that there's no advantage to make that decision today. At least wait until your deadline to file that in case something changes.
John?
And if I'm correct, based on the meeting earlier, it doesn't matter which way you go, it's the same price. So Paquin and Carroll could never raise it higher than what the state was paying.
My understanding is that state is, the law is 1% with a 50-50 split.
Okay.
It was a good review, Jeremy. We did have council action related to this, a meeting last week, and council passed an order to start withdrawing the money as required. I'm not aware of discussions to determine whether a private provider, so I'd be happy to facilitate those meetings, make sure we coordinate.
Yeah, I was able to correspond with Jim about what we were looking at, and then finding out when the rules were released the other day was when we found out that anyone with the same tax ID number had to make the same decision. So I think that came out like, I don't know, last Wednesday or last Monday or something like that. So I was able to email with Jim to think about, saying, hey, look, we've got to coordinate where we're at.
Complex new piece of policy. Thanks for helping us track it. So it sounds like the future action will be, it'll come back to an agenda here certainly by next March, if not before.
That is correct.
Okay. Would you like to take us through the budget timeline?
Yeah, this is just for informational for your calendars. Just looking at where we'll be for a budget review process. After the holiday, I will start reviewing each, school and everyone's budget in the big book. Administrators will meet with me between the 20th and 29th of January to go through each building assessment. Then on the 31st, by law, is when we're supposed to get our initial subsidy reports from the state. I've seen them not follow that before, but They'll do their best. That's kind of the big key for us, is knowing what our asks are and knowing what the subsidy coming in is allows me to calculate what the true tax increase or call would be for the community based off that piece. I know it's everybody's favorite night, but on February 12th, if that subsidy is out, that's where you get your EPS breakdown of how much money and the reasons why, and going through those pieces. And then when we come back from February vacation, we'll have the opportunity to have building level reviews. We'll have meetings in February. February and March leading up to that. Usually the third week in March is when I present that initial draft budget to the city council. Early April, we tend to get our health insurance increase, which then allows us to work that budget a little bit more, with a tentative date of around April 9th as a school committee night, where you guys would kind of hopefully vote on a finalized budget to send to the city council for public hearing, review, etc.
Question for Jeremy on that? The council really appreciated you coming to the meeting last Tuesday, Jeremy, just to provide an update and an overview and presenting. I know that the council really, it's nice to have that connection, and thanks for doing that. I know, like many of you, when we first ran for these roles, thought a lot about the budget process. I remember Councilor Reddy telling me, oh, the budget work, it's not a big commitment. It's just 10 extra meetings. That adds right up. Okay. Well, you know, I think as everybody knows, we are working intensively with our legislative delegation to try to make improvements to this funding formula, but that will not impact this year that we are in, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting when these numbers come out. Any questions or thoughts on the budget timeline? All right. Would you like to speak about Educate Maine, Jeremy?
Yeah, last week, I don't know if you're familiar with Educate Maine, but they're a nonprofit that works with business leaders around the state to talk about some of the education problems or challenges that the state faces. And they did a large study on growing and sustaining Maine's educator workforce, which we know has been obviously a topic because we struggle to get employees, we struggle to get certified employees, housing is an issue. And so I've linked the entire document for you, but in the big piece of it, just wanted to highlight, because it is a 57-page document, and looking through that piece, what basically some of the key findings are. And they're not things that we wouldn't expect, is what I took from it, like declining enrollment in education prep programs. We know that that's something that's happening across the state. Less people are going to college to be a teacher. Increased teacher exits due to low pay, stress, lack of support. Complex certification barriers. That's one of probably our most significant challenges, especially like when we look at the vocational center of somebody who wants to become a teacher but has come out of the field of building construction and then has to join and take 7 or 8 classes to go through that piece at a different pay level, and the possibility that they're not going to have their Social Security benefits anymore because they've entered Maine State retirement. Attraction factors, they talked about strong sense of community, quality of life, autonomy, stable benefits were something that were positives for the teachers. And then it talked about major barriers of high education costs, people who do student teaching and you're not being paid for that, complex certification, housing affordability, compensation, and then that limited pathways into teaching. And then it talked about like some of the recommendations that they gave that you can read through. But I thought it was a pretty interesting report because we face these things every single day, and our problems are similar to some of those in the other parts of the state. But I do feel like in some ways, or at least in the past, we were lucky enough that we were just had the ability to draw from such a bigger population than if you're in Aroostook or Washington County and some of those schools go without an art teacher for 4 years because they can't get anybody to move there or put in. So this is just informational. Thought it was an interesting report. Wanted to share it with you guys because I know that especially the certification piece is probably going to come up a lot in the next legislative session, because there are definitely some conversations between how education feels about things, how higher ed feels about things, the role and the rules that the state board puts into play, and they're having a lot of conversations about that. And if we can't get quality people to enter the field, it's just going to make it much more difficult for us to fill these positions long term. So very interesting report to read.
Thanks for sharing the report. We're very informative. Lisa?
Yeah, that, it is informative, and I think we all know stress and lack of support are things that are barriers that we could challenge. We could conquer that. The other thing is the certification process. You and I had went to a clinic, I don't know, in Augusta at some point, and I know that there was a process for educational technicians to advance. I think Gorham has that program. We kind of listened to it and everything, and I didn't know if that was something that we can investigate a little bit further.
Yeah, we have some people who are going through that pathway.
Oh, they are already?
In the
Okay.
district, and it's just through the partnership with Gorham and some
Yeah.
of those places. That's pretty wide open to everybody around here now. They have the pathway, and community colleges basically wanted to work with, one place to streamline the process. That's a pretty good big commitment and a good commitment for people to make, because they get some time based off their work experience. I think what we are asking is, why can that happen only at the ed tech level moving through, and why can't that begin to happen at the teacher level a little bit more, of
With the
someone coming
certification, for sure.
someone coming out of the field that, say, is an engineer and has all of the math skills, and what process could they go through that could have some time, I want to say time served, that sounds like
It's time served.
but time in a position that would allow them to get some of those certifications. Because one of the things that people do is they apply for initial certification, and there's 5 or 6 classes that come back every single time as something somebody needs. And it seems that higher ed has such a grasp on that, I want to say market, for lack of better terms, is that that's the only pathway to get that credential. And it seems like our teachers in the classroom could help people along the way, or districts could create those classes. And is it a certification in the showing that you have the standards, or is it the fact that you sat through a college course, is something that people are at least debating at this point. And then who has the authority to manage some of those things? Because one of the other things that you will hear from people who come from out of state is, I'm certified in another state. How can I not be certified in Maine and then come back and teach 25 years in Massachusetts, but yet have to take 4 courses? They're not going to come. They're not going to go through that piece and enter that. And so that's a challenge. And then thinking about recertification and those pieces. And, if you send out for your recertification, sometimes you're like 8 to 10 weeks before you hear that. Or if you're new initial certification, and what could be done on a more localized basis to help speed up that process. Because if you're someone who's looking to move anywhere across the country, and you have to have teacher certification, and some states can give it to you in 4 or 5 days, and some states are 6 to 8 weeks, where are you going to take the job? Where you're going to be automatically hired because you already have that in hand. Those are some of the certification hard parts.
Further questions? Chad?
Now, I understand a lot of these are dictated by state and/or local processes, policies, laws, but do you and your staff have a handle on which of these you can control or you can push to get the best people like coming to Biddeford? Is there a plan?
I think no, as far as, because it's a very complex piece of it, obviously pay is one piece that is part of it. But sometimes it's not just pay, it's travel. Some people don't want to drive 45 minutes for an extra couple $1,000s. That may not be worth it when you know, if you're mathematically inclined to do that process out, or time away from your family. Housing would be our biggest piece, is to look at, in the city, affordable housing. Not only, Chad, is this a problem for a school department, but if you think of police and fire as well, that is where I think the most bang for the buck would be having those conversations across city departments and saying, what do we do to make some of that available? Because in the ideal world, employees come into a community, work in a school department, and say, hey, I want to stay here, maybe raise a family, and be part of that piece. I suspect there was a day for some of us here where probably 75% of your staff lived in the city, and that's not the same anymore. And as housing costs creep up, that's the big piece. And like Chris has had new people say to us at a job interview, like, we're not even going to look at Biddeford or Southern Maine, because I don't want to go from a college dorm where I had a roommate to a place where I'm teaching and have 3 roommates to afford it, when I can go to outside the Bangor area and take that same rent payment and just buy a house. I mean, that is probably the biggest play for us, is housing.
Yeah, I understand all that, but there are aspects in here, specifically the attraction factors, that we do have impact or the ability to control. And if it was a question between someone living further away and coming to Biddeford to teach, you know, I would urge this group, or you specifically, to come up with what makes Biddeford stand out. What can you do as a superintendent to make people want to come to Biddeford, be part of the school district, and help our kids?
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. Heard loud and clear on the housing. We're making a lot of good progress. I was just quickly consulting Facebook for an update on the Eddy, which is a development at the end of Barrow Road, at 60 Barrow Road, and that's actually opening up for pre-leasing. That'll be 250 apartments. I think a lot of this just ends up being supply, and we have 2,000 plus now units of housing in construction, and we just got a significant award from Maine Housing, which I'm very proud of. Project that was voted down in Cumberland and will be coming to Biddeford. So heard loud and clear. So we have a series of readings on field trips. Will take us to item F, second reading of overnight field trip BHS wrestling.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Marie, seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Second reading of overnight field trip BHS wrestling again.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Marie, seconded by John. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
I have a question.
Questions, I apologize. I moved to the vote too quickly. I saw Michelle first.
It's probably all the same question.
That's good, go ahead.
That field trip says the date of the event was December 6th and 7th. And I don't know if we missed it last time or if it's the wrong date, but that's already happened. So. just
Anybody
curious.
able to offer an explanation on that one?
I think we missed it last time.
Did we miss
because
it, that date?
wrestling tournament, I think, was, yeah. 'cause
Okay, so we
I know
must,
some
we
kids.
must have missed it in the first reading. We
Yep.
didn't notice the date.
Correct.
Something that's already been done. Okay, we can do that.
All right, good question. So it's effectively a retroactive approval. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous, okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to approve something that's happened in the past. We either need to wipe it off, or
Yeah, so what do we do?
It's already happened, so what should we do? I mean,
Right,
we're
exactly.
approving,
You had first reading, and you've had 3 weeks since the first reading because of the calendar, or, 4 weeks. When was the
Yeah,
last
because our-
November?
because we missed one meeting.
13th.
Correct.
It was
Right.
November 13th or something like that.
Right.
Right. Probably, we just should have noticed that
Yeah.
that should have been a first
So
and
we shouldn't
second
even be
reading.
voting on a second
Right.
reading of something that already happened, but personally, I think
You
we
don't need
voted on
to.
it
We
first.
should have
Should've- I
probably
should've caught
caught
it.
that in the
Yeah.
meeting last time, that one needed to be first and second reading.
Yeah.
So I'll withdraw my second. If the first one's to withdraw theirs.
Want to withdraw your motion, Marie?
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Withdraw the motion.
Okay, effectively withdraw that from the agenda. We'll just skip that item on the agenda. No actions taken. Okay, item H, first reading of overnight field trip BRCOT, the Center of Technology.
So moved.
Moved,
Second.
moved by Marie, seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor? We do have time on that, even though there's some time before this, so that is unanimous. I want to highlight that the Skills USA competition is wonderful, and we had some great wins from our students last year. Winning or not, any participation in this is great. It's everything from IT to electrical and on and on. Really something that's great, and I'm glad Biddeford participates in that. That takes us to item K, public participation, 3 minutes, any item on the agenda or not. Anybody wishing to come forward? Please do not be bashful. Okay, we always like to hear from you, and I think all of our emails are public, so please feel free to reach out. Communications from the board. Megan.
Lisa and I had an opportunity to go and visit Biddeford Primary School last week, and I just wanted to thank all the staff for being as welcoming as they were, and just really enjoyed getting to interact with the students. I got to sit in circle time a few times, and I got a real earful about what the school board could do to be helpful. They were the simplest and most adorable things. It's been a long time since I've been around a bunch of 5- and 6-year-olds, and so I really enjoyed myself and how welcomed we were. So, I just wanted to say thank you about that. It was great.
Great, thanks for that update. Others? John?
I got to visit also and
Right.
had a great time. They all treated me real well and we had great communications. Thank you.
Good. Others? I do have a few things. Last night, the city council held a workshop on the development of a beach management plan. It was really interesting and informative. You can find that on the city website if you're interested in that. We have sustained some pretty significant damage from storms, including right around this time last year. So the thinking is to be able to better define and plan for sort of the inevitability of events like that in the future, and also to a certain extent kind of an insurance policy. If we survey what we have now, it allows us to find federal support to bring it back to our standards. So that was an important thing and a really interesting discussion. I want to thank UNE also for their work. They've been doing some drone flights to show the extent of beaches, and it's been really helpful. Many of you are interested in the city manager hiring process. There is a survey open in which we're seeking to hear from citizens and employees on the attributes that we should seek in the next city manager of the great city of Biddeford. You can find that on the biddefordmaine.org website. That survey is open until the end of the month, so till the end of December. There are only 2 questions, so it's not a daunting survey, but there's basically unlimited character limits, so you can put in there as much as you like. We'd love to hear from people. We had great response to that as well. We'll also be appointing a search committee that will interview candidates. If you're interested in that, please reach out to me. We've had some good response on that, but we need citizen members and also employee members. Also on the city website, Jeremy mentioned about snow days. Also, Snow bans are very important, the parking bans to many people. If you go to biddefordmaine.org and hit that Keep in Touch button that's right there, you'll see where to sign up for the snow ban information. We do our absolute best to get that information out as up to the minute as we can, and we appreciate you signing up for that. Merry and bright night last Friday night was a real blast. I got to hang out some with Santa, but also got to give tours of the newly completed clock tower. We had almost 100 people come through for that tour. It's 9 flights of stairs up, and I'm really proud of everything we've done in Biddeford and to show our city off with that. And I'm always happy to give more tours. I might put together another event. One fun thing when you do get up all those stairs is that many people over the years have signed their name up there. The oldest signature that I found is from 1931, but I do bring a Sharpie with me if you want to sign your name up there too. It's wonderful for everybody to be able to do that. It's pretty cool. One of the people that I toured is Dick Gay. Dick is the crossing guard in front of BPS and BIS. You probably see him every morning as he goes through there. And he had a job working in the clock tower on the Lincoln building, winding that clock for 42 years. So it was so cool to be able to take him up there, see that clock, which is from 1895, now all restored. It works. And the bell rings. We set the bell to ring from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., so 12 hours of the day, because we thought people might not like it if it rang overnight. But it sounds beautiful. And and perhaps an error of judgment, the facilities manager, Ray, taught me how to ring the bell, so I do know how to go up there and ring that if you come up for the tour. I can show that off.
May I add, it looks beautiful, so keep it going.
Thank you, Maria. It does. It's something to be proud of for the city. It looks incredible, and a lot of grit and determination in this city to make that happen. I think, I'll stand corrected here, but I think our next meeting is January 15th at 5 p.m., so just to highlight that for people, so there's not a second December meeting. And Jeremy, our next meeting is January 15th at 5 p.m., I believe I have that right. Somebody quickly check the calendar for me. Yeah. While we're That's what I pulled up on the,
Second Wednesday is the 8th. Yeah, I have the 15th. Second weekend will be the 8th.
I looked at 2024. Somebody,
I have it as the 15th and 29th.
okay. Well, we'll circulate that and make sure we get that right. I think that our calendar here is wrong on the city website. Okay. So I think there is an error on our calendar, at least the one I pulled up, so let's catch that. Yeah, we get a repeat of January 2024 on our city calendar. So, but we'll get that corrected. But the big thing I want to highlight for people, and Jeremy, I want to go to you for this, is we do have a special election related to school funding, and it's coming up on Tuesday, the 21st. It's kind of an unusual situation, so I don't know if you can give us a quick update on that, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's so the way that the application that we wrote for the vocational center for the equipment that we were awarded 400 and I think it's 497 or something like that off the top of my head, is the same process and through the main bond bank that requires a vote of the public, just like a revolving renovations account. The difference is we pay nothing. And so when we got our notification in late August, because of the presidential election, you were past the point of being able to change ballots unless you spent oodles and oodles of money, and it was much cheaper at that point to not reprint 14,000 presidential election ballots in the readers and getting access to those than to have the separate date. And so Robin, the city clerk, really advised us that was the way to go. So that will be a special election on that day so that we can accept the grant money for equipment at the vocational center.
It's the only thing on the ballot. It's just on Tuesday, January 21st. We hope people come out and vote. And voting will be here at Tiger Gym, as is typical, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So thanks for the chance to provide that update. I don't have anything further. Anybody else? Other than that, I accept a motion.
Make a motion to go into executive session for 1 MRSA 4056A, evaluation of the superintendent.
Second.
Moved and seconded to go into executive session, 1 MRSA 4056A. Any discussion? Murray?
No, good.
Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. We'll be going to the side room. We will not be coming back to vote on anything. Thank you for a good meeting and discussion. I'll make a note of the adjournment time. See you soon.
Hey, Jeremy? Could you get someone to send out updated